Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Aquarian Mind podcast. Today's podcast, episode number 168. I'm your host, Jamel Crothers. It's Book Insight Friday, and we're continuing with the Kids with Guns character development and how I wrote a lot of these characters in this series. And this is the third of four podcasts that I will be doing. So we've got today, and we've got next Friday, and then we're done. So today I'm going to delve into the next few characters that I incorporated into this 5-book series, and you guys can find this 5-book series on pretty much all major bookstores except Amazon, and I will address the Amazon ordeal in a few weeks about why my books aren't on there anymore. And you can find everything on my website, and I will obviously leave the link in the description of the podcast so you guys can pretty much find what you need to and go on to my website and see where everything is from an ebook standpoint and a paperback standpoint. And sometimes I do tend to leave the links at the end of podcasts for everything, but sometimes it can be a little bit too confusing, so I just rather make it easier for you to find it on my website, and then you go from there. But anyway, so let's delve into it. So Sheila, who is Matthew's mother, and I'm going to say that including the parents of the kids in this book series wasn't really in the plans. But when I brainstormed my sessions, they were one of the last to be put into the series. And Sheila has some personality traits that will make you go, But I knew that writing this character would be necessary to the series. Her thoughts, feelings, what she's feeling and going through since her son committed one of the worst crimes in the world. And you'll hear from her perspective from part 2 of the series to part 5, which is the case for all of the parents. And Sheila is someone you'll love or not, and it's going to be one way or the other. And maybe there'll be a few people that have the mixed feelings, but I feel like I kind of made her out to be someone that you're either going to love or you're going to be like, look, I can't stand this lady. But anyway, Zachary, who is Matthew's father. Now, Zach is a character where he seems like a good guy, but you'll soon find out that he isn't. And I wrote it this way because I surely don't want any of you guys liking the parents too much. It's like the empathy will be there, and then it dissipates quickly. Their children killed people and changed the landscape of their town, city, state, and the entire country. And fathers are supposed to be a huge component to the development of their children. And let's just say I wrote it in a way where you'll question certain things. Moving on, Rebecca, who is Max's mother. Now, Max's mother was written in a sense of naivety, and you'll learn that as the series progresses. Listening to her perspective from the shooting to the trial and the aftermath, it's pretty interesting. And I wrote it this way intentionally, and it will have you deciding one way or the other on whether you like her or not, obviously. And it's challenging to write 4 books of hearing a parent's thoughts of their child, being on trial for murder and so many other crimes. And it's a roller coaster ride of emotions, and I can't promise you'll feel 1 or 2 emotions because it's rare I write books where you only feel 1 or 2 things, to be honest. Harry, who is Max's father. Another father figure who you'll come to either not like at all or you really can't stand. So yeah, you're just not gonna really like him. Let's just be brutally honest. My exact sentiments with all this is, writing these characters that, they aren't likable. It's hard to do sometimes. It can be challenging. I'm not going to really say like, oh my goodness, I couldn't write this character out. I just had to really create this bad guy persona. Robert was likable. Gary was in between. Harry is a different story. Now, Robert is from The Struggles and Growth of a Man. Gary is from Code Blue Note to the Badge and Gun, and he's a police officer who gets caught up in a lot of corruption, racism, all that other stuff, and he's kind of threading a needle between Code Blue or having morals and values for himself. So that's where I say Gary was an in-between guy. And this is why I say Harry is a different story. And I had to step up to the plate and really write, some thought-provoking content. And to get you to think about his mindset and why he did what he did with his child. Now, don't say I didn't warn you about the parents of these characters who committed the crime of the century. Peter, who is a former friend of Matthew and Max. Now, the funny thing about incorporating Peter into this series is how there are so many school shootings where the kids had no friends. It's always been this interesting thing that has circulated my mind for the longest time. And when I started writing out these characters' names and their roles in the series, I wrote Peter's name, but I honestly didn't have a role for him. And then I decided to make him a former friend and write a story from his perspective. Funny how things happen and, how random thoughts just come to you and you're able to turn it into a solid storyline. And obviously, there was a challenge of how I would write him in the series and how many books would he be in. And to be able to write his perspective for 4 books was really fulfilling for me. And sometimes you can run out of content with certain characters, but as I wrote the series, I started running with my thoughts and just going with the flow with him. Sometimes things just kind of come naturally to me, and I like when I write it that way. And yes, you'll learn why he became a former friend and his thoughts on everything that happened. And it's a good storyline that I hope you'll enjoy, but you guys get to decide that. And it's fun to write characters like him and know that at the end of the day, he made the right decision to break ties with Matthew and Max. Lisa, Matthew's ex-girlfriend. Lisa is another character I didn't think of until I finalized everyone else. The main characters, the people, in school, the government officials, all that stuff. I felt there was a need to incorporate an ex-girlfriend and get her feelings on dating Matthew and what he's like. Because Matthew is one of the most hated kids in America, but there was a need to hear it from someone his age. I enjoyed writing Lisa because it was a different character, a different challenge, and how can I write her into the series and her having an impact on the series. I don't like to just write characters, just for the sake of it. They need to have an impact on the reader and get their minds chugging away at what she's saying and why. And to be able to write her, once again, for 4 books of the series out of the 5, like Peter, it felt good. Trust me when I tell you. It's great to write these characters that keep the story going and give you a person of reason, but also of understanding. And now the drum roll. We are finally up to Matthew and Max. All right, let's get started with Matthew, who is the student of the school and one of the shooters. And a lot of the shooters, they kill themselves. Well, in the past. But in this story, I kept them alive. I needed people to hear things from their perspective. I wrote them into the ending of book 2 for a reason. I wanted to introduce everyone else into the series who will play a significant role first. And Matthew is the most hated kid in the country, and for good reason. And I knew writing him in 4 books of the 5 in the series would be a huge challenge. Each book, he has his thoughts and feelings, and you'll understand his maniacal mind. What is there to love about a kid who commits a horrible crime that impacts hundreds of people in his community? Well, not much. And you'll start to see his evil, demented, head honcho mindset and know he's the ringleader in all this. But there's more exposed throughout this series that you'll find out when you decide to read it. Because the goal is for you guys to go check out the books and read them, right? And Max, the other student and the other shooter. Now, Max doesn't really have a mind of his own. He's a follower, and he wants to be liked, but he has a weird personality that not many take a liking to. Well, except for Matthew. And that's the sum of his story, without giving away too much. And while he's the hated kid for what he did, you'll start to understand a lot of things about school shootings. And for me, I wrote Max from a perspective of you feeling bad for him, but then you really don't. More of mixed emotions in that mindset while reading about him, his story, his parents, his upbringing, and, plenty of other things. But he becomes someone you love to hate. And the series has its share of things you'll realize, and Max shares his various perspectives, but don't doubt that Max isn't smart, because he is, and he knows what he did was horrible, wrong, and defying the masses of the world. And just know that eventually the whole story makes sense, and if you pay attention intently, you'll learn the realities of school shootings from Matthew and Max's perspective. And with that said, that is my podcast for today. I thank you guys for listening. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Hope you guys enjoy yourselves. Be good, everyone, and go accomplish your goals.